guest speakers that we have, different community resources. We did a survey, a health screening survey with our young athlete families about the different things that they were looking for, different, again, resources, different ways that we can support you guys with valuable information. So again, this is our first one. We're gonna plan these out once a month. So I will do some follow-up after this with the other opportunities. But again, we're really excited to have you guys joining us this evening for our very first one. A few things, if you guys don't mind, just trying to keep your computers muted while the presentation is being done. And then if you guys have questions that come up, feel free to write them in the chat box. And then we're going to do a question and answer time towards the end to make sure that all your questions get answered. And then we can, again, just make sure that you guys have the correct resources after tonight. We're going to do a follow-up email tomorrow morning with some resources just to continue providing support to you guys after the discussion tonight. And then, again, we can make sure that you guys have the connections that you need. The last thing is this will be recorded. So just letting you guys know that we're trying to be able to provide these at later dates to families that couldn't log on tonight. So they will be added to our Young Athletes YouTube playlist for any young athlete families, again, that weren't able to join us tonight, so they can access the information as well. So without further ado, again, I just want to take a quick moment to introduce you guys to our speakers for the evening. We have Stephanie Crawford, is it Goetz?
Yeah, Stephanie Crawford Getz.
Awesome. So she is a school psychologist and licensed psychologist who has been working in schools for the last 18 years. She has her bachelor's of science degree in psychology, a master's of science degree in applied behavioral studies, and a PhD in educational psychology with a specialization in school psychology. She has her principal certificate and serves as the director of mental health since 2018 with the Douglas County School District. And we also have Erin, is it Reagan?
Yes, you got it.
Perfect. Who is a lead counselor also for Douglas County School District. Erin received his bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado at Boulder and a master's degree in educational counseling and psychology from the University of Colorado at Denver. So clearly lots of expertise in the field that we're going to be chatting about. So hopefully, again, they'll be able to answer any specific questions you guys have, but hopefully I have no doubt that their presentation is going to be very helpful, again, as we talk about our topic tonight. So without further ado, if you guys want to take it over, we again thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll be excited. We'll share our slides and we'll get going. And as Erin is sharing the slides, as we said in the chat, if you want to put your questions in the chat or save them for the end, we would be excited to have some time left to answer any questions that might arise or that you already came with. Awesome.
So there are people over there listening to it.
And if you could make sure that your screen is muted, that would be so much appreciated. And it will probably help with the recording as well. All right. You know, overall, being a parent of a child is really hard. And there are so many different tips for parents, and it can be really overwhelming at times to know what's best to do with our kids, especially when we're talking about kids and technology use. So, you know, this is a big topic, and there's a lot of different opinions and viewpoints out there that we'll discuss tonight. You know, we're also going to just talk a little bit about us at first and how we are as a role model for our children. We'll talk about the risks of technology. We're going to go over screen time suggestions, digital citizenship, how to get the most out of technology for us, and then how to develop family media plans. And as we get started, we're going to take a little poll at first. This night will be primarily focused on how best to help our children develop. But we thought it would be fun and interesting if we first took just a teeny look at our own behavior. So we're going to launch that poll now. It'll be interesting to see what our results are. And, you know, it's anonymous, so just be honest with what you actually do with your technology and your devices. And I'll take the poll with you.
We'll give you guys a few minutes to answer these poll questions, and then we will share our results.
And I will just be honest that I said yes to all those questions because it can be really, really hard to manage our own technology.
Like 30 more seconds in case you just logged on and want to participate in the poll questions. Seconds. All right. Give this a shot. We're going to share these results.
All right. Well, it looks like from sharing the results, you know, we're a lot alike. As we see, it's really hard sometimes to not lose track and spend a lot of time on our devices, especially those phones. And this helps us as we're going through the night about our own children and how hard it can be for them and how we can support each other. So thank you for taking that poll and having a little fun with us. We really, really appreciate it. All right, so Aaron's going to start presenting again. And he's going to go on to the next slide.
Sorry. Having some, okay, here we go.
There we go. Yeah, so you took a sample, and I think there's one right before this, Aaron. You took a sample of a larger poll that you can just get online if you ever wanted to look at that. And you know, as a reminder, you can always look at this and the slides at the end of the resources at the end of our slides. Everything in our slideshow that will be shared with you has a hyperlink on those underlined words, and we checked and they're working really well so that you leave the night with information from here as well as additional resources to take with you. All right, it's important that we know our own habits as we embark on setting expectations and rules for our children. And knowing whether we're healthy or not and how we're using it will really be good in developing those values and models for your children. All right, so as you see on this slide, that there was some research done and there was a survey of a lot of people asked about what they do on their phones so that you can kind of see where you're at compared to across our nation. And many parents today are feeling that it is a lot harder to parent than it used to be. And as you see from that little chart there, the biggest reason that parents state is technology, how to handle that and how to help your children. So that you'll see like you're not alone if you're here tonight, and neither are Aaron and I. All right. And now we'll go on to the next slide. And I'll let Aaron do a little talking.
Okay. I just want to say thanks for having us. For me, this is an especially big deal because my uncle growing up participated in Special Olympics. So to be with you here tonight is a really big honor for me. As I say do, as I do not. Boy, do I love Yoda. Always have. And this is a great segue into the next slide here, which is really about role modeling. And I heard recently, and I don't know where I heard this, but for kids, more is caught than taught. In other words, kids will do as they see us do as their parents. And they're going to follow our example much more than they will listen to what we ask them to do. At least this has been my experience with my 9-year-old. So actions do speak louder than words. And so when it comes to technology, this is really tricky. And back to the poll, just like Stephanie said, I answered yes to all those questions. I am such an imperfect parent, and I tend to get sucked into the void of my cell phone and my work and paying bills, watching news, checking sports scores. It's really an easier thing to say than to do. So being present is hard with all the competing forces in our lives, all of the responsibilities that we face. This is really tricky. So please, as we go through this presentation, these recommendations are kind of made as a best practice, not necessarily just with the understanding that it's hard. So when we spend time with our kids, it's really helpful, and I think everyone knows this, to put the phone away if possible. We know from studies that if your phone is within 3 feet of you, it still represents a distraction. So if it's possible to put it in another room or in a drawer, that can be incredibly helpful. Schedule and prioritize time to play together, even for 5 minutes, is really valuable. At the end of the day, what our kids want from us more than anything is our attention. They want to be with us. I think for me, one of the biggest gifts of COVID is the fact that my son and I would go outside every day for a football walk. We would walk around the block. I would throw him the ball. He would catch it. And it really is probably the most valuable thing that tradition that we started during this time. Quality is more important than quantity. So if you don't have a lot of time to spend, again, making that time count, playing games, building forts, cooking together, demonstrating that screens are not a central component of this time, is really helpful. And then finally, when parents overuse their devices, openly admitting to your kids that you're going to try to do better not only presents the opportunity for role modeling what it's like to admit that you're imperfect, but also demonstrating that you're going to try to do better. And this is such a great life skill.
Yeah. Devices really can consume a lot of our time. And sometimes they're really helpful to us. Other times they can have a negative impact on our lives and our families and our relationships. And so for those of you that are fellow people watchers, don't you see too often this scene where you're out in a nice restaurant or somewhere where it's an awesome opportunity to be present and everybody's on their phone? Sometimes you see that with couples as well. But is a really important thing that we say to, like, let's be thinking and reflective of what we do overall. All right. And so on our next slide, I just want to share with you that, just like our children, we've been talking, it's hard for us to, imagine, and manage. But if you look at statistics, surveyed parents say that they do find that technology use is interrupting their parent-child interactions at least 3 times a day by a lot of the participants. And then their children were surveyed, ages 5 to 17, and they agreed that they feel like their parents check their phones too much. So they're saying the same things about us that we worry about them. And another area that's really important why we talk about this is, when we're having lower quality interactions because our kids are on their devices so much, then our kids might start withdrawing eventually and having some behavioral issues. And it just really starts this negative cycle that begins. And it's really hard, can be really hard to get out of. So research has shown that it's important to reduce heavy technology use because it does interfere with our parenting and even our co-parenting with our spouses and partners. All right. I'll give it back to Aaron for the next slide.
All right. So my lens is that I was a high school counselor for 12 years. And so I spent a lot of time with kids at the end of the K-12 continuum. And so that's really what this slide is about, is the risks of too much screen time as kids grow older. Every single one of these things is research-based. And so, we see sleep problems happen a lot. One thing I can tell you is that when kids go to bed with their cell phone, they don't sleep well, typically. Now, there are examples of kids who are really responsible and do a really good job, but I can tell you that probably 50% of the problems that I saw in my office were a direct result of a kid who had their phone after bedtime. They say nothing good happens after 10 p.m. I think that's doubly true with technology, specifically phones. Not surprising when kids aren't sleeping well and they're distracted by technology, we see grades drop in school. With males, we see this a lot with addiction to video games. Kids who are spending time on technology read fewer books. I think that's doesn't take a genius to see that correlation. And then the other thing that happens is that it's harder for kids to be present with their families if they are constantly distracted by technology. They get sucked into this virtual world. There was an analogy that I heard one time about kids and cell phones, that it's analogous to leaving the cabinet open, the doors on the cabinet to where all the liquor is at, and just telling kids go for it. The fact of the matter is that technology can be addictive, and kids are not prepared to deal with that. And we'll talk more about this later and how to address this. But kids also don't spend enough time outdoors, engaging in physical activity, of course, if they're tied up with technology. We see weight problems, we see mood problems, poor self-image and body image issues arise. This largely comes out of the culture of social media and the presentation of the perfect life. This is also where the FOMO, or fear of missing out, comes. If everybody around you has this perfect life and you feel like your life doesn't measure up, it really, really hurts self-esteem. And so this has been well documented, and I imagine everyone knows someone who has had an issue with this, and to one degree or another. The other thing that happens is that there's less time learning other ways to relax and have fun. When one of the things about a phone is that it provides an immediate distraction and an instant gratification, so that rather than dealing with issues in ways that help us build resiliency, sometimes it's easier to have a phone to distract you, and that becomes kind of a crutch that can be really harmful. This is not to say that there aren't benefits to technology, but um, these are some of the things that can happen if we overuse it.
Yeah, as we look at some more statistics, and I won't go all over them all, but I thought it was interesting and you may want to delve into it as well. You'll see that a lot of kids that of parents surveyed are spending a lot of time watching YouTube videos. This is happening every day, several times a day when you look at those results. And so while parents find YouTube can be really entertaining and such for their children, they're really worried about too much time on screens and what the content is. And as Aaron goes through to the next slide, just a little bit more statistics.
Sorry,
Okay.
Steph.
I don't know what's going on with the slideshow. Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. You'll see, and you'll get to look at it as well, that parents don't really want to use a lot of time on their phones. They don't want their children to have phones between the ages of 9 and 11. But once the child turns 12, a lot of parents are then okay with their children having the phones. And while they might limit how much time they have, even those parents are worried, what's the impact that this is having on our children? There's worries about school performance, interpersonal skills, and being able to make friends, and also being creative and developing other hobbies. And so these are quite a privilege. That's how devices are viewed. But there is also a lot of monitoring and worry about what's going to happen as our children's brains develop. All right, and as we go through one more slide, you'll see that there are some recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So if you introduce any kind of digital media to children between the ages of 18 to 24 months, you just want to make sure that it's very high quality information that they're consuming and programming, and avoiding solo use of media. So making sure you're watching the media with your children. The recommended age, the recommendation for kids who are age 2 to 5 is 1 to 3 hours a day of screen time and digital time. And I will say most early childhood educators we've talked to for young kids, they have spoken about recommending 1 hour a day is their recommendations. All right, well, we'll keep going on to the next slide. Yeah, so until 18 months of age is limit screen time to video chatting along with adult is a really great example of what would be good for them and their development. Between 18 to 24 months, screen time should be limited to watching educational programming. And again, it's recommended with a caregiver, not by themselves. 2 to 5, this is when experts say you can start introducing non-educational screen time for about 1 hour per weekday, along with the other content being that educational. And 6 and older, the experts encourage healthy habits and just limiting too many activities that include screen time. So they don't give a range of hours anymore. It's really something that you can tailor with your family.
So this idea of digital wellness is very much a modern term. And if you had told me when I graduated from college in the mid 90s that I would be talking to you all today about digital wellness, I would look at you and say, what do you mean? That just sounds weird. And so I'm showing my age here, but this idea of wellness now really needs to extend into how we interact with technology, because it is so interwoven into our lives. So we're going to talk a little bit about well-being, citizenship, etiquette, and safety. And this is really important stuff for kids to know. So it's important to teach kids not to leave personal information on websites. We know about some of the obvious risks with some of the predators that are out there and things like that. But in addition to that, there is this entire industry now that's incredibly sophisticated and well organized that is all aimed toward stealing your identity. And this can happen to children. So just a lot of reasons to have, you know, some awareness around that for kids. Social media exposure needs to be carefully considered. As I mentioned before, there are benefits to social media and there are healthy examples of this in interaction, but it can also be really toxic. So just knowing what services your children are signed up for, maybe being their friend, or having an arrangement that allows you an agreement that you are able to monitor that, just to make sure that what's happening there is healthy. What is posted on the internet potentially stays there forever. One of the things that colleges do now is they check students' social media accounts to get a sense of what they're really like. And I've heard this directly from recruiters. I know that employers do this as well. And so something negative in a Google search can really impact a young person's future in a way that, you know, it's a dynamic I never had to deal with, you know, when I was growing up. It's hard. It's a hard reality. Being aware of potential negative content. So, you know, videos of dangerous stunts are fun to watch, but sometimes kids want to emulate that. They want to try it, you know. We all know about sexual content and the dangers there, negative stereotypes, substance abuse, cyberbullying, predators. There's also a cottage industry that's bigger than a cottage industry aimed at advertising to your child. You know, and then finally, we all know there's a lot of misleading and inaccurate information out there. Again, some of this is directed specifically at kids. Consider monitoring software. NetNanny has been recommended pretty highly. There's a number of other ones. Also, engaging in frequent conversations about media consumption and discussing your family values around screen time. I know in my house, this was not a conversation that we had, but putting front and center this question of, you know, what do we watch? How do we know if there's value there? How do we know that it's legitimate? Is also a really helpful tool as kids navigate this digital landscape. And then finally, as kids get older, it's really helpful to continue these conversations and evolve with them. So I know with my 9-year-old, this is something my wife and I try to do. We try to have conversations about what content he wants to watch and why he wants to watch it. And we encourage him to reflect on what he thinks is best for him. And I'm pretty impressed sometimes at his answers. Okay.
All right. And then we wanted to show you this short video, and it's in the resources that you'll get. You know, how can you help your young children understand about using the internet?
Okay, is this coming up?
Here are 5 internet safety tips for kids. Number 1, don't give out personal information such as home address, school name, or phone number. Number 2, never send pictures to strangers. Number 3, Keep passwords private, except from parents. Number 4, don't download anything without permission. It may contain a virus that can harm your computer. And number 5, tell an adult if you receive a mean or strange message. For more tips, visit us at commonsense.org.
So we all know that technology is a tool. And one helpful question to be asking your children and having discussions about it, is, are we using the technology or is the technology using us? And so on our next slide are just things to be talking about and thinking about with your children. So for example, you'll see on the next slide that recreational screen time, it's really recommended, as we talked about, that you're intentional with what you're watching with your children and what they're watching. As we talked about, educational shows are the most recommended, and not these fast-paced shows or content that has lots of bells and whistles, as well as we've just talked about the co-watching, the co-consuming with your children and modeling and teaching them, what's going on, being aware of what they're doing and being able to have those conversations. One thing that you can do as a really good conversation with your children and an exercise with your children is having a family media plan. And so we have an example of that where you can just have a conversation to sit down and say, let's talk about where we're going to have our technology use. So where do you put your computer so that you can easily monitor and be involved? And where will we not have devices? So if your children are old enough to have their own device, an iPad or a phone, discussing for you what works and what doesn't work from where they're going to use their technology. Again, what kind of apps can they have on their phone and monitoring that? What kind of shows, what kind of movies? I have a 7-year-old, and we have that. Like, you can watch kids YouTube, you can do these games. He learns about other games. We have to have conversations about why they're not appropriate and what we're not going to do. And then it's really important to set the expectation too of when will you use your technology. And that may be a little unique and different for each of you, as well as with who will you use technology and what adults and what siblings will that be for. All right, so I wanted to kind of just go over like how hard this can be. And as we've talked about, like, you are not alone in questions and worrying about screen time for your kids. This was a really hard, this COVID time has been really hard. And the whole reason we were originally asked to do this presentation and then bring it to you as well is because of all of our remote times that we've had to have, lots more technology has been used for education. And so you're finding, well, here's what's been recommended is how much time, and yet my children are online all day at school. And so you're wondering, well, what if they get addicted? Like Erin said, that's a big problem. How do we get back from this? And so for me, this really got bad. As Erin will show you on the next slide, for Christmas, our family got the beautiful present of COVID. So before COVID, even though we had school and online, we were watching mostly educational information, and we were always present with our 7-year-old, and we were always reading books every day as well and modeling using all kinds of information. And then we got COVID for Christmas, except for my son. He got spared that, so that's good. And we just slept for like 5 days. And that we kind of lost the battle. So our son was watching a lot more on the iPad and on the TV, and he could just go wherever he wanted because we were so sick. We were having a hard time knowing what he was doing. And we know that he watched a lot more than he should have and not sure of all the content. So what do? We went back to our family media plan and trying to get things back, because even though someone might be addicted, you can do things about that. And so we started going back to the content that was appropriate for his age. And we faded that time slowly. So we knew we couldn't just say we're taking away devices cold turkey, but we did start reducing the time that he was on it each day, putting back the limitations of where technology would be used and back to our books and our reading. And so it's been good because we're really worried, like, what if we can never go back and he just throws fits if we don't let him be on devices? And we've been pleasantly surprised that that fading plan, he now is back to our kid that likes to play outside and do sports and do other activities besides just be on technology all the time. So I just wanted to review that in case that's happening in your home and you're like, is there something that can be done? There are things that can be done. All right. And I'll hand it over to Aaron now.
All right. So I think one of the things that underlies what we're talking about, a bigger question is, how do we encourage our children to be resilient? How do we cultivate resilience? Resilience is an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And I love this quote: be like the bamboo, bend, but do not break. I mean, what more could we want for our children as they kind of grow into adults? And so, resilience and impact. So we want kids to learn to deal with discomfort versus going into this place of avoidance. And so I know for me, after a long, hard day, there's nothing I want more than to kick back, watch something mindless on Netflix, have a mint Yasso yogurt bar, and just chill out. So that resonates with me. The problem is, like I was saying earlier, if you have a kid who runs into a hard situation and they immediately go to their phone, of course I have mine right here. It's like bad modeling. It allows for them to escape from their problems, and that's not what ultimately helps build resilience. Family connection, of course, is incredibly important. When families go and do stuff together, we know this is good for kids. Self-reflection versus continual busy time is incredibly important. My son will say sometimes during breaks, summer break, winter break, whatever, he'll say, I'm bored. And then his mom and I, and she's a counselor as well, so he's out of luck there. We'll say, well, this is good. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? And so it's helpful for kids to have unstructured time and to be able to find ways to fill that themselves. Of course, creative play is incredibly good for kids' imaginations. Nature, we know from recent research, is an incredible healer. It's incredibly inspiring. And so what we're really trying to do is to cultivate independence versus a perpetual dependence on technology or on anything. All right, this is a video about what the tech titans do with regard to technology when it comes to their own kids. Technology struggles, I tell you. Okay. Excellent. So here are some resources. These are things that Dr. Crawford and I have covered tonight. I think we've shared this presentation. So if any of you have any questions, you can access this on your own if it's helpful. Here are references that we used in our presentation. For those of you who have teenagers, there's a great book called iGen by Jean Twenge that I would recommend as well. So with that, I'm going to go back and what questions can we answer for all of you? Who has a question or a comment? It's so good to see all of you here.
Go ahead.
Beth, would you like to ask your question?
Mhm. Is that
Beth's mom has a question. Does the Game Boy, is it the same as having the cell phone? Beth doesn't have a cell phone,
no?
but she does
don't
take
have.
that Game Boy to bed.
Mhm.
Is that the same as the cell phone?
Saving.
I tell you, I wouldn't say that it's the same, but if it is interrupting sleep, you know, if Beth is using it and maybe not getting the sleep that she needs, I think that could be hard, you know. So I don't know, Dr. Crawford, what do you think?
I agree, just as you explained about anything that's interrupting or could disrupt and distract from sleeping and getting rest can be harmful. So having a good balance with use of all of our devices.
Well, we have a problem in that mom and dad go to bed and go to sleep. And
You stop it.
Beth goes in the bedroom and the lights are off, and I don't know if she's sleeping or not. I hate to take away her independence and take away her Game Boy.
No.
No. No. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I tell you, it's tricky. And I think that what this is emblematic of is that it really demonstrates the fact that, you know, we love our devices. And I tell you what, I had a Game Boy when I was a kid. Boy, did I love that. You know, so Beth, I get you. It's really fun, but I think your mom and dad just want what's best for you. And I think getting lots of sleep is probably a big priority because this is the other thing is that we know sleep is so incredibly important. You know, it allows us to rejuvenate and feel good. And it also helps our brain function in a way that is really important. And so there's been a lot of research recently about how people who don't get enough sleep suffer in other ways, you know. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Who else has a question or a comment or maybe a situation that's happening in your home?
I can read a couple from the chat. The first one is, what apps or supports are available to monitor what our children can access on the internet? You guys have any recommended apps or?
So Net Nanny is an app. I believe that Disney has a product called Disney Circle. And you know that if Disney is getting into this business, there is a big need for it. And so I think what these I don't we are not at that point in my house yet, but I believe what these products allow you to do is to kind of see what websites are being visited, how long they're being visited, and the time that these devices are logged on, so that you can kind of get a sense of what's happening. It gives you a good balcony view. That's a great question, by the way.
And there's traditionally like parental controls on like phones and iPads and things where they can limit the time. Is that correct?
I believe there is. Yeah. And there are new products being added all the time. You know, I think my information is probably already dated because we are talking about technology. So there are a lot of options now. Yeah,
Great.
it's a great question.
The next one is, how do we convince or encourage less screen time short of taking away their device, whether it be a phone or iPad? How do we get them to invest in the idea that there are other things they can do?
So I think it's really interesting. One of the things that that is recommended is, prior to giving a child a phone, creating a contract. You know, and the contract can really clearly kind of lay out all of these things. Now, I understand that the source of this question is that, you know, what do we do now? So let me kind of move on to that. But my experience in working with kids is that they typically have a good idea of what's good for them. And so I know I might suggest starting with a conversation about, what do you think is the appropriate amount of screen time? What do you think is really healthy for you? So this is one place to start, you know, and um, that way your child doesn't feel like you're being mean and taking away their device, you know. But maybe you approach it more as a conversation around, how can we work together to come up with a solution that's going to work well for you, you know. um, but then at the end of the day, if you're paying for the cell phone bill, it's really your prerogative to take it, if it comes to that. And I understand that's a really hard thing to do, and I understand how important phones are to kids, especially teenagers. It kind of represents almost a tribal affiliation. It's how they connect with their people. So it's a big thing to do that. But if it's affecting their functioning and their ability to live fully, um, I would rather take a phone and interrupt a vicious cycle than let that continue. So I don't know if that's helpful.
And Beth asked about, what about too much Facebook? What would you guys recommend as an appropriate amount of time to spend on Facebook?
Well, that's a great question, Beth. I would say, how old?
Beth, how old are you? 33?
33. Okay.
That might be different for her as an adult versus some of our
Yeah.
parents that
So
are.
I would say, yeah, absolutely. Boy, what a great question. You know, I would say, like, I don't know, maybe an hour or two, you know. But here's the thing. It's interesting to me. If you are spending an hour or two a day on Facebook, okay, and you multiply that 2 hours by a week, that's 14 hours. Okay. If we multiply 14 times 52, which I can't do in my head, Dr. Crawford might, because she's smarter than I am, but 52 times 14 is 728 hours a year, divided by 24. That's 30.3 days. That is a full month of the year spent on Facebook. I think the bigger question is, what would be the way to spend your time that would fulfill you the most? If you're going to spend a full month, 24 hours a day for a full month, what would be the coolest thing? What would be the best way to spend that time? So I'll just leave it at that, because I think as an adult, Beth, you probably have a much better answer to that question than I do. But great question. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Beth. We have one more, I think, from Lacey. My 9-year-old son with Down syndrome is still doing virtual learning. The Chromebooks they are given by the school don't have blocks on YouTube or many other sites that could be Googled. He often looks up things that he shouldn't be during learning time. Is there any advice besides having to continuously monitor him to avoid that?
Wow, what a great question. What a great question. So obviously you can look at the search history on a Chromebook, and you can see what has been looked at. And I'll be completely honest, I'm not a tech guy. As you could tell from how I advanced the slides in our presentation, I'm not. But I think one suggestion I do have is to reach out to his school and ask this question, because it's possible that every school building has a tech person, and these tech folks tend to have access to things that surprise me all the time. So there might be a setting on the Chromebook, there might be something that can be installed, like an app that could help with this. But what a great question. Yeah.
Another one is using time on her Amazon Fire as a reward a bad idea?
I don't think that's a bad idea, actually. I think I'll I don't want to do all the talking. I mean, but I think Dr. Crawford and I would both agree that having mutually agreed upon rewards motivates kids. It's a positive parenting style. It's a way to provide incentives, and people typically do better when there is an incentive. And I don't see a problem with that. And I think that that's actually that's a really good way to look at technology. This is something that you enjoy doing. If you meet these expectations, you have this amount of agreed upon time. And I think that's totally appropriate. Yeah, another great question. This is a great group.
I didn't know if that was going to backfire down the line. You know how like with food, they say don't make like food or treats a reward, because then they associate that with always getting a treat, or that sort of thing, or dessert or whatever. So I just didn't know if that was going to create a double-edged sword, but we're beyond like stickers. Like that's not motivating, at her age.
Right.
So thank you.
It's a great question. I would say, we have small rewards that we offer our kids, and then we have bigger ones. And so if I don't know, if there is a bigger reward for, let's say, like really good attendance for a semester, and that entails a trip somewhere, or a family outing somewhere special like Elitch's, or I think that recognizing kind of the magnitude of what has been done is also really helpful, and not making that about technology, is really helpful. So the really good stuff doesn't relate to technology. It relates to shared experiences with family. It kind of helps delineate, what a big reward looks like versus, a small reward. But I'll be honest, Lauren, I've done that myself with my child. Get your homework done, and you can have 30 minutes on the TV or whatever. Yeah. You got
And
a
I
great.
will say, that's a great question. I use it too, because it's preferred. So however many minutes of reading we do, that's how many minutes of your game work you can do, So, make it fit, because it's recreation that they want to do, just like we do.
Awesome. Great questions. Are there any other questions? I don't see any more in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and ask any questions? All right, let's see. One more. Would you recommend taking the device for a period of time before implementing a contract with an understood limited amount of time? Did that make sense? Do you want me to reread that?
I think I got it. So, assuming that there's no way to negotiate appropriate use of the device, or assuming that there is a real difficulty on the child's part to stop using the device within the agreed upon parameters. I think that this is something that would make a lot of sense. Now, you have to be prepared for the fact that this is going to be really hard, and I have seen teenagers flip out when their parents take their phones, but if you take a long range view and you explain that what you're trying to do is do like a hard reset. And it's funny because my niece just went through this. She's 13, serious addiction to her cell phone, and it was taken away from her for I think a period of time, like 6 weeks. And then it was reintroduced, with real clear parameters. I can tell you that she was like a different kid a week after this happened. Much happier, much more present. But it was painful. I mean, it was really hard on my brother and sister-in-law. Yeah, what a great question. Okay, so I have the chat up and I see, do you recommend a weekly fast from our devices as a family as a whole? Wow. What a great question. Dr. Crawford, I'm doing all the talking. You want to jump in?
I think that is really cool, and it could be interesting to see how it goes. But if you can do activities where it's just agreed upon, we're taking a break, it may not need to be a week, but depending on your interest, I mean, there's something great about being like, we're camping, we're backpacking, we're somewhere where phones don't work, and we're just going to be a family and enjoy our time together. So I think that could be good. Definitely reset our brains, rethink our brains. I mean, we do that even before. That's why it's so important sometimes to have those family vacations and just get away from everything. Let yourselves relax, refresh, regroup. I think that could be really hard for many of us on this video to do a whole week. But absolutely, some breaks are a wonderful idea to do daily and then as a trip. What a great idea.
Awesome questions. Thank you guys so much. So those resources that they shared in their presentation, we will send a follow-up email tomorrow with those direct links, so you guys can have access to those and use them, hopefully to, again, support you guys in this tough endeavor as you move forward. Erin, would you mind, I know you mentioned a book that you would recommend. Can you toss that in the chat really quick if you have that information available too, and we'll make sure and share that. And again, just for you guys, just the families again, this is an opportunity that we're going to be offering once a month, these information hours. So please be on the lookout for Ashton's emails with the next one. It's going to be on the topic of unhealthy eating and how to work with picky eaters, how to make eating more fun for kids, especially if they're super picky. So if that's a topic that interests you, we'd love to have you guys join us again. And then we would also love it if you guys would help encourage other young athlete families to join these calls. Hopefully you guys see the benefit from it and can share that experience that you had this evening with other families. Again, we're trying to obviously grow this and have as many families join us as possible. So, and we'll continue to email out the different topics throughout the year as we get those confirmed. We do, like I said, the next one's unhealthy eating, and then the third one will be oral health. Some of our Special Smiles clinicians will be on to, again, talk about how to maintain oral health and encouraging teeth brushing and flossing and those challenges that I'm sure come up on a regular basis with our young athletes as well. And then it looks like Erin and Stephanie put their emails in there. Thank you guys so much for that. If you guys have any other direct questions, if they can email you directly, or if you would prefer they go through me and then I can follow up, we can do it that way as well. I think that would be.
You can email me directly. I don't mind.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Whichever
Awesome.
way works best for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And Stephanie has already also offered some other featured topics that we've talked about, things like anxiety, can't remember, mindfulness. We're going to talk about navigating the IEP process. So those are some of the future topics that we have kind of on our radar to put out there. So hopefully we will see Erin and Stephanie again soon. I know not too many of our folks are still on, but just on behalf of them and myself, I just want to thank you guys again so much for your time tonight. I know you guys are both very busy professionals, so we really appreciate your expertise and just your support as we try to provide these different opportunities for our families to capture as many helpful tools in their tool belt as possible as they navigate the lives of their young athletes. So we really appreciate your time, and hopefully we will see you guys again soon.
Thank you for having us. Really an honor.
Thank you so much. As Erin says, quite an honor to get to speak to our fellow parents. So thank you.
Yeah, thank
You
you.
guys so much. We'll follow up tomorrow with an email. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Good work, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Just email and let us know if you need anything.
I
Yeah.
sure will. Yeah, we'll send this follow-up email tomorrow with all those resources you guys provided. And then I'll reach out if you guys, again, want to help out with any of our future topics. We'd love to have you guys. So we'll be in touch shortly.
All right. Sounds good. Have a great night.
Thank you. Enjoy your
Bye.
evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.